Will they stay in a risky state like California? Well, to talk more about it, we're joined today by Anthony Esposito. He's the founder and CEO of Island Capital Investments, and Bryan Ganz is the president and the CEO of let me get this right, Byrna or Byra?
Byrna Technologies.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And I really want to hear what both of you have to say. We'll start with you, Anthony. Millions of homeowners now left in the dust. Rebuilding could take years. When all is said and done, how can they secure coverage in a place like California, because many of these insurers are pulling out, and then the reinsurers coming in asking for higher premiums, so the cost is only going to go up?
I think this is once again the Democrats in the state of California and Governor Newsom showing that poor policy leads to poor results. You have a state that has literally created a climate where insurers cannot find it possible or in any way cost efficient or effective to insure the residents of the state. So what's ended up happening is residents were dropped from policies because of these ridiculous policies in California. And now there's been a catastrophe which has been pretty easy to forecast, because there are typically these types of fires in California. Again, mismanagement of the lands, and you have citizens who are not insured. So this isn't necessarily agreed, on the insurance company side. This is poor policy, just like it's poor policy to take money away from the fire departments, not ensure that the reservoirs are filled with water, and then allocate $3 billion to illegal immigrants for health care. Poor policy, poor results, and then a lot of lies and a lot of bows on top. But it's not changing the result of what we're seeing in California.
Right. And it just goes to show that local elections do matter, because this is affecting everyone. But I mean, Bryan, California for years hasn't allowed insurers to weigh weather risks, Florida also, and Louisiana, when setting their rates, making the state especially risky for insurance companies. How do we solve for this problem, though?
Well, I think you point out a very important fact, which is this is not a new problem. Florida has been dealing with this problem for a long time. What they did was to have the state step in, and I think that the state needs to have a conversation about whether they're going to be the insurer of last resort. There is the theory that if you can't get insurance, you shouldn't be building. On the other hand, you've got a lot of homes there already. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that if they have a mortgage, the bank will require them to have insurance. So those homes that do not have insurance are homes that do not have a mortgage. The other thing to say, and I know this is probably an inappropriate time to say it, is that these losses, terrible as they may be, are an economic boom for the geography. So this is sort of like the Contractors and Builders Relief Act of 2025. We were about to sign a lease for a new store in Pasadena last week, and we pulled out not because the store burned down or even that the neighborhood burned down, but we were concerned that just getting a permit, just finding lumber, finding contractors was going to take our tenant improvement from 3 months to 9 months. So there's a lot to consider here, but there will be a lot of economic activity in the wake of this natural disaster.
Anthony, he brings up a very good point. However, yeah, the price of materials, it's going up. The cost of labor is going up, but we still have the regulations to rebuild, which also adds an additional cost. And if you cannot get insurance, then you could try to rebuild all day long, unless you have 100% of the capital, the house is not going to be rebuilt. And when you add all of these factors up and look at the state insurance plan, which is about $458 billion in terms of exposure risk, which is up 63% and more than double to 2021 numbers, even the state insurance pool is actually almost exhausted in terms of risk. What say you?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. The state is mismanaging funds across the board. The pool is short, and those that were insured, for example, if you have a $20 million or a $10 million home, because of the area that we're looking at in particular, they might have had an insurance policy that only covered 2 or 3 million, so maybe 10% or 20% of the cost of the house, and then they were able to get an insurance policy. So they're still in the hole. So again, it's poor policy, it's poor planning, it's misappropriation of funds. It's no accountability across the board, and it's just dishonest. I think that it puts the residents of the state in a very bad position, and it shows exactly what we don't want to have happen. And this is why the state of California, as beautiful as it is exporting residents, right? We've seen over the past few years that it's a net loser of residents in states like Florida, even though they have similar issues as far as weather and potential catastrophes. They're picking up residents. Why is that? Because of policy and because of leadership.
Anthony, yeah, you led into my next question. I mean, Bryan, what about the demand issue here? The builders can build all they want, but people are going to be hesitant to go back to the same place that they lost their home, because are they going to trust the local government this time around? I mean, I would be scared too.
That's an extremely good point. And if you look at fires like in Lahaina, in Maui, a lot of residents chose not to go back. They just saw that these were intractable problems and they were not going to be solved. California has already been suffering from a mass exodus as a result of the regulations in the state. All you have to do is look at Tesla moving to Texas. My brother lived in California for 35 years, and he now is living in Scottsdale, Arizona. So it's just, they're fighting an uphill battle. And this is just sort of, I hate to say it, but it's sort of one more nail in the coffin. There will be a lot of people that choose not to return.
I have to push back a little bit, Bryan. I respect your opinion, and in part, I do agree with it. But also, Tomas Philipson, an economist, also made the same point in terms of economic boom. However, there's a flip side to this, Anthony. If people don't have the money to rebuild, cannot get the capital to rebuild because they were underinsured or no insurance at all, it seems like there might be a shift. Of course, we're not talking about the wealthy. We're talking about the everyday common working class individual. They will likely have to downsize their what they're accustomed to with regard to their home, live smaller, and buy what they can afford if they want to stay in California, in that area.
That's correct. I mean, that's 100% correct. And I'll go one step further, and I will kind of look out into the future. And I bet that we'll see a state like California, who operates in the red with massive deficits like our federal government, is now going to be taken care of by President Biden for the next 184 days, all costs included, as the residents of Western North Carolina are still out in the mountains in the cold with no food, no shelter, and no help from the federal government. So let me rewind to California. I will bet that the areas that are now burned down, where people cannot afford to go back in and rebuild their homes, will be taken over by a dysfunctional state government funded by our taxes and a dysfunctional federal government. And we'll see additional state takeover of what was once private property and private ownership now will become more of a socialized state, which should be no shocker, but I can see that happening for sure in California. Yeah. And like they say, let no good and let no, disaster or crisis go to waste. I can see that happening here, as we still have residents in North Carolina out in the mountains trying to survive the winter. All eyes and all attention and all dollars are being sent over to California. So watch the socialization of property in California from this disaster.
Exactly. It's going to start with the rezoning, and then bringing in the idea of what they see as a working class community, which will not be a whole lot of large single family homes.
Well, if the price estimates add up, the current LA fires would be the most expensive in U.S. history. Experts saying they could reach nearly 4% of California's annual GDP. So on that note, Bryan, how, talking about socialization and other people paying for some of the rebuild, how does the everyday American not in California resident, rather, get affected by these fires? I mean, the insurance premiums, of course, are going to go up. Everyone is going to have to pay more for this, as well as just funds coming from FEMA, for example. We already saw $100 billion go to hurricane relief. I mean, how do we get more money for the California fires?
Yeah, these insurance companies, as you point out, and the reinsurers are national, in fact, global companies. So if they're taking a loss in a place like California or Florida, of course, people in the middle of the country are paying for it. The other thing, and to talk about what Anthony was saying, you are going to see the government step in, but you are also going to see just a disruption. It doesn't mean that they're going to go back to exactly what was built before. Even if there are private buyers, they may put up, low-income housing. They may put up rental housing. You'll find that this is an opportunity, this disruptive opportunity, for the land to be put back to a better use, or what private parties think is a better use.
Yeah, and like I said before, it either will be drastic downsizing. I'm not saying to tiny homes, but something close to it, or apartments, essentially rezoning and reclassifying people. But most of all, Anthony, not getting back on the wealth creation track to home ownership. People transitioning to rentals. That is not the way we want to go, because that also reduces the tax base. We only have 30 seconds. What's your response, Anthony?
Then not only rentals, and it's a fantastic point, not only rentals, but you look at California, proud to be a sanctuary state, now have public housing at the expense of those that put their life's work and money and earnings and savings into their homes, destroyed, rebuilt by the state in a socialist way, now funded by the state and federal government to house what is becoming a sanctuary state for illegal aliens. Watch it happen. It's
Exactly.
sad, but watch it happen.
Absolutely. Anthony Esposito, Bryan Ganz, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.